Section 5 of Luther's Large Catechism. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Andrew Coleman. The Large Catechism by Martin Luther. Translated by F. Benty and W. H. T. Dow. The Fourth Commandment. Thus far we have learned the first three commandments, which relate to God. First, that with our whole heart we trust in him, and fear and love him throughout all our life. Secondly, that we do not misuse his holy name in the support of falsehood or any bad work, but employ it to the praise of God and the profit and salvation of our neighbour and ourselves. Thirdly, that on holidays, and when at rest, we diligently treat and urge God's word, so that all our actions and our entire life be ordered according to it. Now follow the other 7, which relate to our neighbour, among which the first and greatest is, Thou shalt honour thy father and thy mother. To this estate of fatherhood and motherhood, God has given the special distinction above all estates that are beneath it, that he not simply commands us to love our parents, but to honour them. For with respect to brothers, sisters, and our neighbours in general, he commands nothing higher than that we love them, so that he separates and distinguishes father and mother above all other persons upon earth, and places them at his side. For it is a far higher thing to honour than to love one, inasmuch as it comprehends not only love, but also modesty, humility, and deference as to a majesty there hidden, and requires not only that they be addressed kindly and with reverence, but, most of all, that both in heart and with the body we so act as to show that we esteem them very highly, and that next to God we regard them as the very highest. For one whom we are to honour from the heart, we must truly regard as high and great. We must, therefore, impress it upon the young that they should regard their parents as in God's stead, and remember that however lowly, poor, frail, and queer they may be, nevertheless they are father and mother given them by God. They are not to be deprived of their honour because of their conduct or their failings. Therefore we are not to regard their persons, how they may be, but the will of God who has thus created and ordained. In other respects we are indeed all alike in the eyes of God, but among us there must necessarily be such inequality and ordered difference, and therefore God commands it to be observed that you obey me as your father, and that I have the supremacy. Learn, therefore, first, what is the honour towards parents required by this commandment, to wit, that they be held in distinction and esteem above all things as the most precious treasure on earth. Furthermore, that also in our words we observe modesty toward them, do not accost them roughly, haughtily, and defiantly, but yield to them and be silent even though they go too far. Thirdly, that we show them such honour also by works, that is, with our body and possessions, that we serve them, help them, and provide for them when they are old, sick, infirm, or poor, and all that not only gladly, but with humility and reverence, as doing it before God. For he who knows how to regard them in his heart will not allow them to suffer want or hunger, but will place them above him and at his side, and will share with them whatever he has and possesses. Secondly, notice how great, good, and holy a work is here assigned children, which is, alas, utterly neglected and disregarded, and no one perceives that God has commanded it, or that it is a holy, divine word and doctrine. For if it had been regarded as such, every one could have inferred that they must be holy men who live according to these words. Thus there would have been no need of inventing monasticism nor spiritual orders, but every child would have abided by this commandment, and could have directed his conscience to God, and said, "If I am to do good and holy works, I know of none better than to render all honour and obedience to my parents, because God has himself commanded it. For what God commands must be much and far nobler than everything that we may devise ourselves, and since there is no higher or better teacher to be found than God, there can be no better doctrine, indeed, than he gives forth. Now, he teaches fully what we should do if we wish to perform truly good works, and by commanding them, he shows that they please him. If then it is God who commands this, and who knows not how to appoint anything better, I will never improve upon it." Behold, in this manner we would have had a godly child properly taught, reared in true blessedness, and kept at home in obedience to his parents and in their service, so that men should have had blessing and joy from the spectacle. However, God's commandment was not permitted to be thus with such care and diligence commended, but had to be neglected and trampled under foot, so that a child could not lay it to heart, and meanwhile gaped like a panting wolf at the devices which we set up, without once consulting or giving reverence to God. Let us, therefore, learn at last, for God's sake, that placing all other things out of sight, our youths look first to this commandment, if they wish to serve God with truly good works, that they do what is pleasing to their fathers and mothers, or to those to whom they may be subject in their stead. For every child that knows and does this has, in the first place, this great consolation in his heart, that he can joyfully say and boast, in spite of and against all who are occupied with works of their own choice, "Behold, this work is well pleasing to my God in heaven, that I know for certain." Let them all come together with their many great, distressing and difficult works, and make their boast. We will see whether they can show one that is greater and nobler than obedience to father and mother, to whom God has appointed and commanded obedience next to his own majesty, so that if God's word and will are in force and being accomplished, nothing shall be esteemed higher than the will and word of parents, yet so that it too is subordinated to obedience toward God, and is not opposed to the preceding commandments. Therefore you should be heartily glad and thank God that he has chosen you and made you worthy to do a work so precious and pleasing to him. Only see that, although it be regarded as the most humble and despised, you esteem it great and precious, not on account of our worthiness, but because it is comprehended in, and controlled by, the jewel and sanctuary, namely, the word and commandment of God. Oh, what a high price would all, Carthusians, monks and nuns pay, if in all their religious doings they could bring into God's presence a single work done by virtue of his commandment, and be able before his face to say with joyful heart, "Now I know that this work is well pleasing to thee." Where will these poor wretched persons hide when in the sight of God and all the world they shall blush with shame before a young child who has lived according to this commandment, and shall have to confess that with their whole life they are not worthy to give it a drink of water? And it serves them right for their devilish perversion in treading God's commandment under foot, that they must vainly torment themselves with works of their own device, and, in addition, have scorn and loss for their reward. Should not the heart then leap and melt for joy when going to work and doing what is commanded, saying, "Lo, this is better than all holiness of the Carthusians, even though they kill themselves fasting and praying upon their knees without ceasing? For here you have a sure text and a divine testimony that he has enjoined this, but concerning the other he did not command a word. But this is the plight and miserable blindness of the world, that no one believes these things. To such an extent the devil has